So, what are some practical tips listeners can use to start generating leads for their business on the platform? Um, Most business owners, it's great to be able to connect with other people and network, but at the end of the day, that's everybody's trying to grow their business and increase revenue. So, what tips would you give them to generate leads?
Cool. So maybe one quick tip would be to treat their own profile as a landing page,
Mm,
not as a CV. In other words, your ideal client and you are less interested in realizing whether, EXP or Keller Williams was something you did in 2021 or 2022. But the way you can help them is more important. So the simplest exercise would be to ask someone who's a prospect to look at your profile and tell you what they think when they read it.
okay.
And sometimes they will say something that will make you think about the words you used or the way it's crafted, and their feedback is more important than our own thoughts, because again, our profile is not made for us. That would be tip number one. We can go into tip number two whenever you'd like.
Yeah. Let's dive deep into it because I think the more people understand how to use it and generate leads, the more positive impacts they can have on their business.
Cool. So if we speak about business, I'd like to focus on the metrics.
Okay.
And the metrics, believe it or not, are not LinkedIn metrics. In other words, I don't believe you need to grow your connections. I believe you need to grow your business.
Mm-hmm.
And why do I say that, Andy? Because connections are a means to an end. There are 5 free ways to leverage LinkedIn platform without advertising. And you don't have to keep growing your network if you work in a service-based industry. And if you want referrals, then you should have a closely knit network of people you actually know.
Okay.
When I look at your profile, I see that we share one mutual connection, Alex Sanfilippo.
Yeah.
This discussion actually happens thanks to Alex's venture, thanks to Podmatch.
Right.
Imagine I would want to reach out to Alex, and I saw that you were our mutual connections. Then I could speak with Alex and say, should I speak with Andy because I want his advice about A, B, and C about client retention? And if Alex says, yes, Daniel, you need to speak with Andy, then our discussion will be a lot easier.
Okay.
It's not a hard sale. I would come almost pre-sold. I would be less price sensitive. I would trust you a bit more because someone I trust has says, yes, you need to speak with Andy.
Yeah, kind of. It's like warming up leads, right? Like you get them warmed up to you, kind of similar to making content when they understand. They watch your content over and over.
Absolutely. And basically, the question is, do you want to be the most connected or the best connected? Most connected brings exposure. So if you have 40K followers, then many people will see the content you create on LinkedIn. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have 40K, then maybe the best strategy for you would be to stick to people you know, because the dead zone is somewhere in between. If I grow my network and now I would have 6,000 connections, but I wouldn't know most of them, then I don't get a lot of extra exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, I polluted the quality of my network.
It's interesting because I think it's difficult. It's difficult to wrap my mind around that because on most platforms, everybody is trying to grow a bigger following. So to hear that maybe, I know in some of your other stuff you had mentioned exposure is overrated on LinkedIn, which is what you're talking about. It just seems counterintuitive to what we're all used to doing on everything else. But it makes sense.
I appreciate you saying that. I think LinkedIn is very counterintuitive. Mm-hmm. And I could talk about that or link in the show notes about specific ways that are mind-blowing, because whenever we think the right thing to do would be X, it's often something else. And LinkedIn is counterintuitive because LinkedIn keeps pushing us to grow our network.
Hmm.
But as business owners, instead of saying, hey, now I have 2,000 impressions or now I have 10 likes, we'd rather say, hey, now I just landed a contract with a customer that could bring us $500,000. And revenues without a connections may be better than connections without revenues. As
Yeah.
simple as that.
Yeah, that makes sense.